You'll notice the Lee Grant films behind me along with your autobiography.
Oh, I didn't. Thank you for telling me.
Sure. This is Frank J. Avella on behalf of Awards Daily, and I'm here Zooming with Oscar winner Lee Grant. She's also a four-time nominee, and she's an icon. Hi, Lee. How are you?
Hi, Frank. Nice to see you and
Nice.
talk to you and meet you in person.
Likewise. It's such a thrill.
Isn't Zoom like amazing?
It's incredible, right? It's got us through the lockdown, right?
Yeah, it got us through the lockdown. That's how I saw all my friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lee, you just entered your 9th decade of acting, which is crazy. You started in the 40s, and you're still acting.
No, I'm not acting.
I saw you did a film recently, though.
No, what?
It really? I read that you did something called Killian and the Comeback Kid.
Oh, no. I introduced it.
Oh, okay.
My dear, good, kind friend. It's his first film, and he and his mother are the closest people to me, Taylor Purdie, and so I simply introduced it. And yeah, no.
I guess you're done. But what made you initially want to pursue it as a young girl?
Pursue acting?
Yeah.
I was very fidgety in school, and the only subject that really interested me was English and poetry and writing and reading, and reading Tolstoy, reading Chekhov, reading when I was, like 9, 10, 11. Failed math all the time, couldn't care less about geography. And it turned out that I don't have any sense of direction at all. No east, west, north, south. I mean, the only thing that I was good at was English. And so by the skin of my teeth, I failed. I was, thrown out of music and art for not going to classes, but flirting and doing other things. And so acting just seemed to be the only thing that I cared about or was passionate about. And so I went to the neighborhood playhouse when I was 17. And it was home. I came home.
You were on Broadway, though, by the time you were 19. That must have been pretty extraordinary.
Well, it seemed to me to be the natural progression. Theater was home, and particularly in those days, when the community of actors was so tight and so small, and I was invited into the actor studio, which was Kazan and Kluman's invention of taking the best young actors and older actors in New York and teaching them the Stanislavski method, which I had learned from Sandy Meisner. But this was a very concentrated world of young people like me and older people like Sandy Meisner, and it was my world. And it was the most satisfying world that I could possibly have entered.
Well, it led you to Detective Story, which I want to talk about. It's a terrific film. You did both the Broadway show and the film. You were one of the few.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're different mediums, but how did your performance change or evolve?
Well, I didn't. William Wyler, who directed the film, bought Joe Wiseman and Mike Strong and me kind of just as we were on the shelf. You know, he transplanted those performances right into film, and 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 it was exactly like doing the play. It was the set was set up exactly the same way, and and we never got to see Kirk. We never got to see Kirk because that was another set. You know, so I really didn't get to know him till much later.
That's funny to hear. Well, you won the Cannes Film Festival Award for Best Actress for your performance.
Yeah, I mean, for Best Actress in 1952, wasn't it 1952?
Yep, and you got your first Academy Award nomination.
And I had no idea what the Academy Award was. I'm a New York kid, or the Cannes Film Festival Award. I had no. It wasn't until years and years and years later when I said, "What? I won the award for the best actress in the world, film actress at the Cannes Film Festival," when I had no idea what it was or what an honor it was. By that time, I was living in a walk up with my then to be husband, and he was a communist, and I loved him, so I became blacklisted because I married him. And so my life was so off the rails of what was commonly accepted, the Academy Award, the Cannes Film Festival. I was in another world.
You didn't get to attend either, Lee?
No.
Well, let's, if you can, share a little bit about the Blacklist, because I know you were basically blacklisted for giving a eulogy.
Giving a what?
A eulogy.
Yes. Yes. Remind me of the name. Since I was asked to name names in order to work by the Un-American Activities Committee, I have a name problem. I have a problem saying people's names, and it's
completely understandable. It's J. Edward Bromberg.
J. Edward Bromberg, and so we were in the wings in a play written by my husband Arnie Manoff, and I left Detective Story to go into this new play, and it was written by and acted by these refugees from California who had all been members of the Communist Party when it was, really chic. That's, people don't remember that. It's like Barbara Streisand in the way they were. That's the milieu. It was like the hottest, chicest writers, actors that all joined the Communist Party because they were advanced, because they were Democrats, because they were forward thinking. And then suddenly it became as bad to be a communist as it was great and in to be a communist. And so as those people traveled back to New York or London or wherever they were chased out of California for, Arnie Manoff, who was one of the writers in California, wrote this play and cast me in it. All you need is one good break. And in it was J. Edward Bromberg, who stood in the wings with me and said, "They're asking me to testify in front of the committee again." He already testified. "My heart is bad. I'm afraid it's going to kill me." This is what he said to 20-year-old me standing in the wings. And then we went on and did the scene. And so he wouldn't testify. He fled to London, and he was doing a play there when he died of a heart attack. And so they had this huge service for him at the Hotel Edison. And Gadge Kazan was there, and Arthur Miller, and everybody who was extraordinary in Broadway at the time. And they asked me as a young person to say some words about him too. And I said what he told me, that he'd been asked to go in front of the committee and that he felt if he did that it would kill him. And he left and his heart turned on him anyway. And then the next day I went to an Actors Equity meeting. This friend actor in front of me said, "Oh, you made the Blacklist." The day after I said those words about Bromberg, I was put on the Blacklist, and I stayed there for the next 12 years, from 24 to 36. 24 years old to 36.
Lee, you had the courage not to name names. Was that an easy decision for you?
No, it was not. It was not a hard decision. There was absolutely no temptation. There was, no temptation. Don't forget, I wasn't a film person. I'd only made one film. I was a television person because the whole industry was in New York and California, so the industry was there. But I never even dreamed. It was so horrid, the idea of naming somebody else in order for you to get a job. The concept was so revolting, was so disgusting. And I pitied the people who were way into their career and were having to make up their minds about naming a friend or never working again. Name a friend or you'll never work again, because it did last 12 years, the Blacklist. And those are people's lifespans. 12 years. I was blacklisted for 12 years, and then I had a great career for 12 years. But that was the span of my next career, from 1936 to 1960, 70 something. That's about the lifespan of an actor in Hollywood.
It's true.
When you're loved and when you're discovered, to when to the eyes go to the next hot new gorgeous thing. That's about the lifespan. And that's one of the reasons why directing was such an easy step for me to take, because I had a sense when I got the Oscar for Shampoo that I was not going to be offered the kind of remarkable, delicious, divine parts that I had been playing in Hollywood for the last 12 years, having such a remarkable break. As bad as the Blacklist was, it was a great school. It was my college, the Blacklist.
Wow.
I learned politics. I learned life. I broke up with my husband. I had a child. I had a baby. My little girl, Dinah Manoff, who has just written a marvelous book. I'll have to get the name for you.
Love her.
And it's coming out this summer. But those, three entirely different lives. Being a little girl in Manhattan and then becoming an actress, and then being a blacklisted wife, and mother to two stepchildren, two boys and a girl.
Well,
Very
Lee,
secret lives.
well, how did you feel about people like Kazan?
Um, I had very mixed feelings about Kazan. Kazan was the greatest director in the world in the 50s and the 60s. The things that he did on stage, the Tennessee Williams plays, the Arthur Miller plays, broke every boundary of both the writing and the directing and the acting. And it was all actor studio, too. Don't forget that. He started the studio, he taught the actors who he was working with, and you saw the kind of work that was going on. That was, they were masterpieces. And he was the master of the pieces. And so, of course, he was a member of the Communist Party. Had been with the group. And that was the in thing to do. It was the in thing. You didn't want to be out. You wanted to be in. So suddenly, the world changes. And so they say to the man who's at the top of his game, either give names or you'll never work again. Now you think of the stream of films that he did in Hollywood after he named names. And they're incomparable, including the one about the guitar player who gets so famous and so popular that he runs for president.
A Face in the Crowd.
Face in the Crowd. You know, which is decades before Trump.
Yeah.
Decades before Trump, and could not be more Trumpian. Yeah. You know, could not be more Trumpian. And so in his work, the concept of democracy was always present. His choice, I'm not going to retire. He's the most ambitious director, most ambitious man ever made, and nothing's going to stop him.
Yeah.
Certainly not a political change of plans or change of mind. You know, yes, communist, no communist. That's not going to stop him from directing. So while I didn't talk to him because I was on one side and he was on the other, I always felt I understood his choice.
Interesting.
That you know, and after all, in when was it, 1964, when the Russians turned in Stalin and said what a terrible dictator he was, and all the artists in jail. Well, why did it take 12 years for us to know that?
Yeah.
You know, that artist colony that I lived with, they didn't believe the American newspapers. It wasn't till the president of the Soviet Union, who came after Stalin and turned him in, that
was Khrushchev, right?
Huh?
Khrushchev,
right? Thank you for telling me. That they said, what? This is what I've been holding on to and believing in all of this time. And you know, the deaths were very high. Arnie Manoff, who I was married to, he died at 52. John Garfield died at 39. The ripping away of people's lives as musicians, as actors, as directors, as writers, just took away their lifetime.
Well, you at least survived, and you came back with a vengeance, starting with Peyton Place, which brought you your first Emmy. Can you tell me about that experience, television calling you back?
Well, um, I had moved to West End Avenue and gotten a telegram from the Un-American Activities Committee, that to be 1962 or so, saying that it was okay for me to work. And the networks, had been way ahead of, have been wanting me to work. I was like 32 then. And I got myself a facelift because I had gone through a pretty rough time in those 12 years. I could act on Broadway, I could act in theater, but I had two stepsons to bring up. I had had a baby. I was very, very involved in getting rid of the television union, the people who were in charge of the television union, because these actors in AFTRA were turning in other actors also in AFTRA, betraying them, having actors get up in front of the whole AFTRA meeting and beg for forgiveness for having signed it was, and so I was very involved politically. And I was not loved by my husband. And so it was a period where I needed up. And I needed up to look like I was young again, and that I was like where I started out again. It was a need to go back over those 12 years. Not that I ever wanted to lose the children and the struggle. I love the children, I love the struggle. But I got so ambitious for myself to make up for all that time. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make it up. And I'm gonna be as pretty as I was 12 years ago. And fuck it. That was such a drive. And I think it also had to do with the fact that my husband wasn't attracted to me or didn't love me or didn't appreciate me. And so I wanted that satisfaction from other men. I wanted to be seen as a woman again, as somebody excited and available and sexy. It was like taking those years back. And of course I did.
Yes, you did. You did. And Norman Jewison was the first to hire you in a major studio film with In the Heat of the Night, which I just watched again, and it is scary in how timely it is.
Well, of course, Norman Jewison was a highly political director. And The Heat of the Night could not have been, and is, advanced for this time right now with Black Lives Matter, because Sidney Poitier was the star of that film. And of course, he was the sophisticated detective from Philadelphia, held up in this rural town in the South, which could not have been more bigoted. And who is the wonderful actor who played the sheriff?
Rod Steiger.
Rod Steiger. Rod Steiger played the bigoted sheriff. And, you know, think about it as a movie. Think about it today. I mean, it's just a perfect, forward looking film that nobody could expect. And of course, Sydney was so strong and so beautiful, and so exciting. And Rod got the Oscar that year. And they knew about me. I mean, we never discussed. Norman knew about my history. He knew I was blacklisted. We never talked about it, but he knew that my husband had died. We never ever discussed it, but he knew. You know, and I start to tear up when I think about it. He knew that I was the part. You know, that I could bring the loss to the film. And we improvised the scene, you know, where Sydney tells me that my husband is dead. And that's the way it was shown in the finished movie. But it was such an extraordinary experience for me to be so safe in the hands of the director. And Hal Ashby was there the whole time he was editing the film. Yeah. And of course, Sydney and Rod, who, I mean, were so welcoming. And so all of that was there for me when we filmed. And I just was so lucky in that period, because one film after another, you know, that was just extraordinary.
That same year, Lee, you did Valley of the Dolls, and have to ask you about this because you know I love Valley of the Dolls. Were you aware that it wasn't quite Oscar material when you were making it?
Not quite Oscar material. Well, you know, after not working for 12 years, all people had to say was, do you want to, and I, you know, yes. Do I want to work? Do I want to do this job? Yes, 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 was my answer to everything. and so, of course, you know, I'd done Peyton Place, and Barbara, you know her last name.
Parkins.
Barbara Parkins was in Peyton Place, and also Patty Duke. You know, Patty Duke, who had and Sharon.
Yeah, you shared so many scenes with Sharon, and they were beautiful.
All of my scenes were with Sharon.
Yeah.
Sharon. Say the last name.
Oh, Sharon Tate.
Sharon Tate. And I was so fond of her. And she was going with Roman Polanski at the time and was terribly in love. And so I felt very privileged, actually, because the meat of the screenplay was not the kind of, you know, I'm going to make it in show business kind of thing that the other actors had to do. It was a secret that I had about my brother, who this woman Sharon Tate was married to, that he had a defective brain and was not going to last. So I had a very good secret as an actor. And my scenes were all with her. And well, when the movie came out, it was, you know, one of the funniest movies of the year. But I had those wonderful moments with with Sharon, and it was a very interesting thing. Who was the director of it? Do you remember?
Mark Robeson.
Mark Robeson. Yeah. Uh, we finished the scene on Friday, and I came back on Monday, and we did the scene. And he said, "Come with me a minute. You come with me." And so he led me through the studio, and we got into a trailer and went up the steps into the trailer. And I thought, what could I have done? What's the problem? And he said, "How do you do that?" I said, "What?" He said, "Well, we cut off the scene on Friday, and here it is on Monday, and you just picked it up right where it left off, and it was an emotional scene. How did you do that?" And I said, "I'm an actress." That's what we do. That's the job. But it was so funny to me because, I guess he had been an editor before because he timed his scenes. Like, okay, we have 4 minutes and 20 seconds to do this scene. It's an editor's point of view, and so he was so wrong for that film, since it was all emotion.
It's taken on such a cult following. It's crazy.
Oh, please. I saw them do a thing on stage, every line exactly the same. And I mean, people fell out of their seats laughing, including me.
Wow. Well, that same time, I read in your autobiography, you write this interesting account of Shelly Winters and how she had this diva-like behavior on the visit, but then how you ended up bonding with her on Buenos Aires, Mrs. Campbell. And I'm wondering, did that happen often with actors where, the relationship wasn't wonderful, but then kind of became a bonding experience later?
I wouldn't say with actors. I'd say Shelley was one of a kind, both in her bad side and her good side. And she gave me her bad side and her autocratic leading lady side in the balcony, and I guess I wore her down in Buenos Aires, Mrs. Campbell. And the thing was, whether it was her bad side or her good side, she was so open about anything, her anger, her funny side, her humor. And I was in a play on Broadway with Tony Franciosa, who had just finished being a waiter at Shraff's before he got the lead in this play that I did with him. And Shelley walked in and walked out with him. He'd been married at the time. She wanted him. And she must have been, pretty hot because he was a gorgeous guy. And he walked out on his wife and married Shelley. So she had a lot of power. And she used it. And she was a very, very good actress. Very interesting actress. And she cared a lot. It meant a lot to her.
The profession.
Yes. Yeah.
Lee, then in 1970, you did The Landlord, directed by Hal Ashby. That was also about race relations. It's an extraordinary film. That got you your second nomination. And I'm wondering, was this one more significant because it was after the Blacklist?
Gee, I don't think so. They had hired Jessica Tandy, or were thinking of hiring Jessica Tandy for the part I did in The Landlord. After all, the only thing I'd done for them was In the Heat of the Night. And that's how they saw me. That was the actress that they knew. They had no idea that I had, a comic character side. So when I read the script, which they asked as friends, read it, see what you think about it, give us your opinion. And I read it and I said, I have to play this part. It's my mother. This part is my mother. I know her inside out. It's my mother and my aunt. It's exactly the way they talk and exactly the way they behave and exactly the way they thought. And they said, no, of course not. And I put on a blonde wig and I went to the studio and I put myself under, the lights that make you look older, and I lined up my face. And I did the part for them and I got it. And that whole experience of making that film and allowing myself not to be the pretty lady, not to be the sad lady, not to be this lady or Stella from the wharf, but to go into character and find this woman who nobody saw before, was such a release for me. And I had so much fun doing it. And it was a gorgeous movie and one of a kind. Play this today, any place, and you'll find the kind of, resounding thank you for the script. Thank you, actors, mixed actors, black, white, leads, not leads, but the story. I mean, it was remarkable. And Hal Ashby, that was his first movie.
Yeah. We're going to talk about Shampoo in a minute, but I want to ask you about the film you won your second Emmy for, which is a wonderful little movie called The Neon Ceiling by Frank Pearson. How did that come to you?
The playwright was a woman whose name I forget. Do you have it? The playwright?
Not off the top of my head. Sorry, that one stumps me. Sorry.
What?
That one stumps me, but I'll pull it up soon.
See who wrote it.
Was written by Carol Sobieski.
Carol
Sobieski.
Say it again.
Sobieski.
Sobieski. Carol Sobieski. What a script. I mean, the script was like the best European movie that I've ever seen. It is a European movie. I mean, it was so sensitive and so showing the side of a woman in a bad relationship, which I certainly related to, of being with a husband who was not attracted to you and didn't like you and was critical of you in every way, with a daughter, which I had also had in my past life, with a daughter who was close to me and who cared for me and who looked out for me. And we get in this car and just drive away. And so the whole experience of it was like living out a certain part of my life. And Gig Young was the was the guy in the neon ceiling, the garage, the gas station, and was so beautiful and so sensitive and so remarkable in handling this wounded little woman who had come to stay with him, who could go on no further. And Denise Nickerson played my daughter, who was, so much older than I was at 12.
Yeah.
She was the parent. She was the one who took care of her mother as if she was the mother. I was helpless. And so this extraordinary script just appeared, and Frank, who directed it,
Frank Pearson.
Frank Pearson, who was a great friend. Frank Pearson was a great friend. And I was in other things of his, but we were close friends. He directed it, and it was a very sensitive, beautiful piece of work. And the one I'm most like protective of, because I needed protection, and I could explore that at that time as a woman who needed protection.
Interesting. Very interesting. And Shampoo. It's time for Shampoo. Can you tell me about working with Warren Beatty on Shampoo?
Well, Warren showed up when I was doing a play on Broadway, Neil Simon play on Broadway, and he said, "I have a script for you." And when I got back to Malibu, he set up readings for the year, and they were readings with Goldie, with Jack Warden, who was, my pal from the Union days, from the Blacklist days, and with the playwright Robert
Town.
And so we read for months until Warren and Robert Town felt.
Not me. By helping you control eczema with Dupixent, you can show more with less eczema. Don't use if you're allergic to Dupixent. Serious allergic reactions can occur, including anaphylaxis, which is severe.
Wow. That was odd.
It's happened to me too, so I get it. Yep.
Anyway, this whole family, what became a family, got together, Goldie and Julie
Christie.
Gorgeous, incredible, original. Julie Christie was such an original, So this family, this gorgeous family, we were together for a long time and rehearsing, and then moving into the studio, and Warren did it all. He was involved with all of the casting, with all of the rehearsing, with all of the writing that he did with Motown. And I think that character that he found, the hairdresser, was just extraordinary. It was just extraordinary. His need to, to please, and to finally, please have a salon of my own, so that I'm not working for somebody else. and his need to please women, to please me as a customer, as a woman in bed, as a needy, crazed kind of Beverly Hills woman whose husband was in love with Julie Christie. He created all that. He involved him. He created it. And I helped, and Hal directed. So.
Did they work well together, Warren and
everybody? It was a very hot set. And by that I mean sexually. I mean, it was, we were all in heat, including all the hairdressers and the makeup people. I mean, it was woo. Yeah, it had that kind of effect on everybody, except Hal. Hal was cool.
Did you have an inkling that you were going to win the Oscar that year?
No.
No?
No, I've been up for the Oscar like 4 times. I think 4 times.
That was your third.
Huh?
That was number 3.
That was number 3.
Yep.
And I never won. And, I was used to like arriving at the Oscar place. Oh yes, Miss Grant, who's your costume? By myself. And then when it's finished and you're not chosen to be the one, it's like, get out of the way. When we're focusing on the person who won, so I was pretty used to being welcomed and then pushed aside. So I didn't really believe it when this 4th time my name. And as I walked down the aisle, I had a sense, because I was in my late 40s, probably 48, something like that it was over. That I'd had my 12 years of the Blacklist, my 12 years of, this sunny Hollywood, gorgeous career, doing all these wonderful, extraordinary parts, and just, eating it up. Yum, yum. One more delicious than the next. And that it was going to be over. And I only did one really big movie after that.
Which is the next one I wanted to talk about, actually, which is Voyage of the Damned.
Voyage of the Damned.
Yeah. Which I honestly, it's one of my favorites of your performances. I think you should have won the Oscar for Voyage of the Damned. I know they don't like to give them 2 in a row, but personally, I love your performance in that film. What was that shoot like? There was so many great actors.
It was extraordinary. First of all, we shot in Spain, in begins with a B. It was a great, gorgeous city, and hundreds of us were there. Don't forget that it was a ship full of Jews from all over, and Germans who ran the ship, and of course, the actors were just the most brilliant actors in the world, all gathered together. Sam Wanamaker was my husband, and the girl who married Peter Sellers after the movie was my daughter. I can't say all the names. But the names in it, you say them because.
Sure, I mean, Oscar Werner was in it. It was an incredible cast. Faye Dunaway, you had most of your scenes.
Faye Dunaway, that was the movie she did before
Network.
Yeah. And it was, just the most remarkable coming together. And of course, My husband Joey was there. My daughter Dinah was there. I had adopted. We had adopted another daughter at the time, Belinda, and she was. I mean, the whole mishpacha, the whole family was in Spain, and it was just. And of course, this big boat that I got seasick on all the time was there. And the director was one of the first directors who gave me a job right after I was blacklisted. And it was one of the best television shows on television. And he gave me my new start back in television.
Stuart Rosenberg.
Stuart Rosenberg.
Wow.
Great, great human being. Great human being. And it was, it was like the icing on the cake. Also to be able to throw myself into that part.
Yeah.
Because I had my own losses, and this was the kind of part where I could explore and find, and it was great. It was a great catharsis.
Faye Dunaway's gotten a lot of flack over the years. Did you find her to be easy to work with?
That kind of criticism that Faye gets is like what female actresses are very apt to get as they get older. Faye Dunaway, when she was discovered with Warren Beatty in what's the name of the movie?
Bonnie and Clyde.
Bonnie and Clyde. Hallelujah. There's never been an actress like this. There's never been an actress as beautiful. There's never been an actress as smart. There's never been an actress as interesting. And then after we did Voyage of the Damned, she did Network, Patty Chayefsky's Network, which is one of the most brilliant films ever made.
Yep.
And she was absolutely brilliant in it. And she got her Oscar. And the downward slide of Faye in Hollywood, the way that she was treated after that was, she was just kicked to the side. She was kicked to the side. So if she developed an attitude, what do you do after being treated like the second coming and then are kicked aside and told you're too fat?
They don't do it to men.
Huh?
They don't do it to men. Right? They don't do that to men.
They don't say it to a lot of women either. Yeah. There is a cruelty which comes to the women who are extraordinarily beautiful and extraordinarily wantable that doesn't come to like people like me who are character actresses who can play this, who can play that. Although she has played all those things, she certainly did in the movie that she did with Jack Nicholson.
Oh, yes. Why isn't it coming to me? Yeah.
Okay, but she is a real screen actress. And
Chinatown.
Chinatown, which is also a masterpiece. So I am on Faye's side. That's the way I feel about it. I think she was treated bad.
Well, I'm happy to hear that actually. And actually, speaking of the name Faye, I had a question about your TV series because the creator of that series, Susan Harris, is the genius behind Soap and Empty Nest, which your daughter Dinah ended up starring on. So well, I was too young to have seen that show, but I read that it was actually a really, really smart series. What happened?
Empty Nest?
Faye.
Oh, Faye.
Yeah.
Oh, Faye.
Yeah.
You're too young for Faye?
I was how old was I for Faye? I was like 5.
No. I'm such a grown-up next to you. You're just a little kid. Yeah. Well, Faye was fun, you know. Faye was fun. And very, very well written, and it was fun to do. And then I went to work one day, and the set was closed, and nobody showed up. And so I was supposed to be on the Johnny Carson show that night. I went and I knocked on the door there, and I said, you know, the show has been shut down. So Johnny Carson said, well, come on anyway. And so I got to get my grievances off my chest. Because I wasn't told.
Wow.
I need it, you know.
Insane.
Yeah.
But there's so many films I can ask you about, but I want to talk a little bit about your directing. Before I get to that, though, there's one film that you made that was directed by Robert Altman, which is Dr. T and the Women. I'm just curious what Altman was like to work with.
Bob Altman was a great friend. There are pictures of him all over my living room, and his great wife. And at a certain point, I stopped being able to remember my lines. This happened when I was in my last week on Broadway in the Neil Simon play. And it became a huge impediment, both emotionally and physically, for me, and a huge question for me of whether I could act again. Because my comfort on stage, which has always been, and in film, which has always been complete, always been, you know, I can do anything. I became self-conscious and watched myself and was scared. And so Bob was doing this film, and he said, why don't you come try out the theater, because you're with me, I'm your friend, and it's a small part, and you can just like test yourself and see, you know, how you're doing. And I was directing by that time. I was directing documentaries, so you know, I had gone on to an entirely different career in which I was very, very happy, and still am. You know, and you know, the films that I made when I was directing were so close to me, and I loved them. So he was asking me at a time when I wasn't an insecure actress, I was a director, and I loved him. And I thought, you know, I'd like to watch him direct, because I love Bob Altman films, and I love to see what he does that I can learn from. And so you know, I went to wherever, whatever state we were in, I don't know. And when my part came, I went first to his dressing room, which was right, you know, those big cars that were right behind each other. And I sat down and I did, because it was a long, she was a psychiatrist. So it was, and I did the whole thing, a page and a half monologue. And 2 tears rolled down.
That's amazing. I'm gonna love this.
Sitting across from me. Then, when the camera was rolling, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I seized up. You know, something, you know, the fear got me again. You know, so, you know, we got through it and I did it, but I only did it once right, just across from him in his trailer. I couldn't get it when the camera was on, which was, you know, that was the test, you know. I was a leading actress, and this was a bit part, you know, and that was a way for me to see if I could act or couldn't, and I couldn't. I did the same thing in David somebody movie, big movie. I forget the name, but I tested.
David Lynch?
Huh?
David Lynch, Mulholland Drive?
Yeah, Mulholland Drive. You know, just to test myself. And I wanted to watch him direct. David Lynch was an interesting director.
Yeah.
And I felt I could see what he did. Same thing. You know, I managed to get, but it wasn't coming from me, the actress. It was coming from scared Lee Grant. You know, and that was it. It had dried up. In the same way, you know, as I dry up on names, you can hear it, you know, when I dry up on names. Well, fortunately, there's always somebody around who knows what I'm talking about.
Well, let's talk about that switch, Lee, to you as a director. In particular, Tell Me a Riddle, which was your first feature film, your first narrative feature, with Melvin Douglas and Lila Kadyrova. What a lovely film that was.
Exquisite. And you know, I had, as I was walking down the aisle with my Oscar from Shampoo, I was thinking to myself, you know, this is about the last time I'm going to be walking up and down this aisle. You know, I have to think of what I'm going to do next. Because I got it, and I'm not going to get it again. Although I did when I made documentaries.
Down Out in America, you got it for, yeah.
I got it for Down and Out in America. But I went to, what's the school? They called and said we're having a small group for women who want to learn directing. AFI. No, was it AFI? What's the school in California?
The American Film Institute, yeah.
AFI.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did a little tiny film for them, and these girls in San Francisco saw it and gave me Tell Me a Riddle from that tiny film that I did at AFI. You know, I got with the writer, and she worked this incredible script out from this incredible story that Tilly Olsen had written. The girls were in love with Tilly Olsen, and of course I fell in love with her too. And this dream, you know, going from making a 20-minute film for AFI to this, you know, magnificent script for Tell Me a Riddle with Melvin Douglas and Lelia Kudrova, who I think is one of the great actresses of all time. And I'm directing them in this great story about end of life, you know, about these two old people, younger than I am now. These two old people who are, you know, struggling with each other and cranky, and I want to do things my way, and I'll just, you know, going to San Francisco, where Brooke Adams is their granddaughter, their beautiful, wonderful, delicious granddaughter. And the three of them find their love together. They come together as a couple. And it's just, you know, I was, you know, sitting under the camera watching them and just, you know, trying not to make a sound because I was never so moved by performances as by Lelia and Melvin, you know, working together, working as people who were at the end of their lives, who were in their 70s at that time, but, you know, actors who, whoa, you know, pounced on their parts and chewed their parts and ate their parts and were together something that was electric. And I, you know, and I was privileged. God, how did that happen? You know, how did that happen? That I got to be director of that film. I mean, and the cinematographer is Fred Murphy. Cinematographer is Fred Murphy. And with every cinematographer I've worked with since, and they've been the greatest in the world, who have done the greatest films in the world, they have been my partners. Because, as I said, I don't know math. You know, driving a car doesn't come easily to me. And a camera doesn't come easily to me. I don't know stops. I don't know, you know, gradations or anything like that. So my partner is always the guy or the woman on camera.
Yeah.
And we have flown together. Fred did Tell Me a Riddle, and he also did the documentary that won the Oscar.
Down and Out.
Huh?
Down and Out in America.
Down and Out in America. And all of the cinematographers I've worked with have come. Sven Nykvist. Yes, Sven Nykvist came from
Sweden
to come and work with me on the television film that I did with Marlo Thomas.
Nobody's Child. Oh my God! Talk about extraordinary films and taking on.
Child.
Yeah,
Nobody's Child.
So good.
Just extraordinary. Nothing like it.
And groundbreaking at the time.
And groundbreaking.
Yeah.
So that was Sven Nykvist, you know, and that's what my relationship with all the camera people. Thank God I'm not a camera person. Thank God that I have a partner there who, you know, who I love and respect. And all of the partners that I've had in all the documentaries have been that kind of, you know, oh, look at this here. Look here. Oh, I didn't see that before. You know, a real lucky me, just
lucky, but also gifted too. It's interesting how Down and Out in America, which was made in '86, Nomadland just won the Oscar, and it's very interesting the parallels that those two films have.
Well, Down and Out in America was, a huge experience for all of us. And I had begged HBO to do it. And one of the bosses there said, no, that's not going on. It's a phase, it's going to pass. And it was the Reagan years. It was the Reagan years. And pro-Blacklist guy. And thank God they said, okay, go ahead, do it. And I had women producing in our company. Joe Fury is my husband, and it's Fury Grant, and he's the producer, so he produced all of those films. And I had women producers who found all the places that I could go to find my people. The hotel where they were putting up people who didn't have anything, and all across the land. What a privilege. What a privilege to meet those people and to have them be so open and willing to talk about what had happened. And what's happening now all over this country.
Yeah.
They're shaken up.
It's true. I wanted to ask you a question about, because you went through the Blacklist, I wanted to get your opinion on cancel culture.
On what?
Cancel culture. This idea that people go on social media and they, if somebody makes one mistake, their career is completely ruined now, today. Do you feel that there's a parallel with McCarthyism?
What did you call it?
Cancel culture.
Cancel culture. Well, in order to get to talk to you, my sister-in-law, Phyllis, had to use her wits in putting this picture on and using her Zoom, because I don't know how to do anything. I can dial a phone. But as I said, I was not born with technical ability. I have not. My brain doesn't go there. I can dial a phone. That's about it. So I am not attached to this world that we're talking in at all. And it's just as well, because it's the most destructive world in every sense that I can think of. The most self-indulgent, the most endless time put in, and the meanest, the cruelest. People suddenly allow themselves to be with other people, and there's no recourse. There's no recourse. It's vicious. It's vicious. And I don't know when the people who allow other people on their stations to do that will say, if you do that, you can't appear again. If you do that, a standard of behavior, there will never be a standard of behavior, because part of the fun of it to a lot of people is to see people be vicious to each other and to see people get hurt. And so that's not a world that I want to be a part of. And it's just as well that I'm not, because when I was a kid, if I saw somebody beating up on somebody else, I would find a way to stop. I'm on the side of the good guy. That's me. And if anybody's going to hurt somebody, then I'll interfere. And so it's just as well that I have no access to this, because I'm very protective.
You're loyal. I like that. Lee, I had one last question about the Blacklist, and then just a couple more, and then I'll let you go.
Want to go?
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll keep talking. I wonder, did you ever get to confront anyone who named names during the Blacklist?
Really? Not really. The only way I got to confront them was that I worked very hard to get the AFTRA board voted out. I worked very, very hard. I got signatures. I went backstage. And I got John Henry Falk to get a board. And he was blacklisted because he did what I said. John Henry Falk had a radio show and he was doing very, very well. And Madeline Lee and I went to visit him and begged him to run for the board and to get people around him who would shove the blacklisters out of being the board members and the president of AFTRA. And he did that. And because he did that, he got blacklisted himself. And there's a book he's written, John Henry Falk, about the court trial that was set up, John Henry Falk, against all those people who blacklisted him. And he won millions. And that's really the great part of the end of the story of the Blacklist. And one of the men who was called on because he was so guilty was this grocer from Syracuse. And he was called on the next day to testify because he had kept John Henry Falk from working, and he died in a motel the day that he was to testify. How's that for drama?
Oh my God.
And so there, guy from Syracuse. He was the guy who got me off the soap opera when I was blacklisted. I crept on the soap opera and I was the maid stirring the soup. And the guy who owned the store in Syracuse said, "Get Lee Grant off the soap opera. She's a commie."
Was there a particular moment where you knew that it was all over? Was there like I guess a validating moment? Was it like winning the Oscar? Was there like a specific moment?
Well, there was a telegram from the Un-American Activities Committee, which said, "You are no longer under investigation. You are free to work."
That's crazy.
And I was able to take it to CBS and to NBC and say, "I'm clear. I got a telegram from heaven."
Lee, do you have a favorite film of yours?
Well, I think one of them is the one that deals with, I can't think of the name of it, the he-males, the she-males,
Oh my God, yeah. It's one of the very few of yours that I haven't seen.
Oh, Well, you should see it. It's just extraordinary, and especially at this time when um, when gay rights was being spoken about, and my
Is it What Sex Am I?
what sex am I? Yeah, what sex am I do think that the people in What Sex Am I shared stuff with us, with me, and with the camera, and with such deep pain and need to be themselves. I, as a blacklisted girl, certainly, knew what that pain and that need was to be accepted, to be accepted as yourself. Those 12 years certainly left their mark on me, so that I identified so much with men who wanted to be women and women who wanted to be men, and all the stuff in between, because of the shame and the public shame, and the restrictions in society, and the treatment, that they were given. And I really identify with that. As a blacklisted, as a person who was thrown out of society, as I was. And I think that documentary, What Sex Am I, is extraordinary, and the people in it are just extraordinary, and their need to communicate, to say, this is my life, this is it. So what? So what?
Right. Lee, would you say, are there any myths or misconceptions about you that you would like to dispel?
Well, name a couple. I don't know.
Oh, I honestly, when I read about you or I think about you, I think of the word fearless. So, I don't really think there's much out there that, says anything different than that. I was just curious as to whether there's ever been anything written about you that was wrong or you didn't agree with.
Well, I'm not the subject of any gossip.
No.
My affairs, whatever they were pretty secret, and I've been married for like 55 or more years to the little Italian boy, uh, Joe Fioretti, whom I'm madly in love with, and I mean that. And he's been painting these last 12 years, and he's been doing this extraordinary work, which makes me worship his talent. So I'm in love, and we've had, big differences over the years, but he's produced all my films, so we've been, really in tandem. And I couldn't have done it without him. I'm not a producer, and I don't know how to make nice or be funny or get money. I don't know how to do that. I only know how to work on films. He does. He's outrageous, which is, what you need to be in order to get people to sit up and give you money.
Will you direct again?
It's possible. It's possible. Always possible.
Well, I hate to wrap things up, but unfortunately, I don't want to take too much more of your time. I just want to tell you, it's been an absolute pleasure. I think that your work has been really, really important to film history, and your work as a director and as an actor and as an activist. Um, I don't know where you get your strength, but wherever it comes from, God bless you.
And you too, Frank. Listen, you're writing, you're expressing yourself, look what you're doing. I can't do that. I would love to. I'd love to call, somebody and say, hey, what about this about you? What about that about you? Which I certainly did in documentaries, but you're doing it here. And it's much more intimate. Don't you think so? I mean, it's just you and me, babe.
Yeah.
I
like it. Yeah.
It's really interesting how intimate it is. I, never saw you before, didn't know you, and yet, your interest opened me up, into exploring things I haven't thought about in a long time. And that's a gift. That's a gift from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you.